The first question that our artist statement answers is, what do you write? And this is sort of like talking about your focus to poetry, the types of poems you write, their form, and also their focus. So that question, what do you write, also seems a little bit broad. So what I have done is I've given you 4 guiding questions underneath that bigger question to kind of focus on your work and see how you can answer those questions based off of the 3 to 4 poems that you have already written down. The first question is, what are some recurring themes? So for me, in my artist statement, I say that my recurring themes are like family, trauma, and like personal growth. And then the second question is, what questions are your poems trying to answer or explore? So maybe they're not answering them, but they're exploring them. And if you look at my writer's statement, my artist statement, the question that I'm trying to answer is, how does a woman rebuild after trauma? And how does a woman rebuild her relationships and herself? And the third question is, what are you experimenting with in these pieces? So for me, I was going from short form poetry to long form poems after I read Lee Young Lee's Rose. And then the last question is, how are these pieces a step forward in the work that you've created in the past? So as poets, we're always going from like one level of like focus to another level of focus, either if it's like through form or structure or just like thematic differences in our work, because just like as we change, our work changes. So we want to be able to show the audience or who we're explaining our work to how we are going from one place to the next. Now that we've answered the question, what do you write? We have to move on to the second question, is why do you write? And this is the question that shows the motivation for your work, as Ajane was saying, like what motivates your work, what drives your work. And when we're thinking about that, you just go ahead, focus on those 3 to 4 poems, and you can ask yourself 3 different questions. The first question is, what made you write these poems? And if that's a big question, that can be very, very heavy. But as you can see in my writer's statement, I've only like given like 1 or 2 sentences to that. It doesn't have to be like a 3 to 4 page description, just a couple sentences. So in my artist statement, I'm talking about personal experience, and I'm talking about the lives of myself and my family. And then the second question you can ask is, what poems or books were you reading at the time when you wrote these poems? And for me, the thing that changed the way that I was approaching poetry was reading Lee Young Lee's Rose, and that poem that he wrote, the long poem in that section, that was called Always a Rose. And reading that poem changed the way that I approach poetry, like in general. I stopped going from short form and then these long flowing poems that became a chapbook. The other question you can ask yourself is, what poets or writers inspire you now? And you can think about, what are you reading now, and how does that affect your writing as a poet? So we've gone through those 2 questions, what do you write and why do you write? And then this question always feels so big. The last question is, how does your work impact others?